Okay, welcome back after a 3-month summer break, as they say, and we resume in the book of Shmuel Aleph, Perek Zayin, Pasuk Aleph, chapter 7, first verse. Just to update everybody where we're at in the story, we are after the events where the Plishtim captured the ark, where the sons of Eli, Chafni and Pinchas and Eli, they all have died. They were all punished, as it were. The ark was taken by the Plishtim. However, Hashem punished the Plishtim for it. And then the Plishtim returned the ark back to Beit Shemesh. And the people there treated the ark very casually. And Hashem brought a very strong plague to Beit Shemesh. And then they sent messengers to a city called Kiryas Yearim, and they told them that we want you to go and take the ark to Kiryas Yearim. And that's where we're up to now in Perek Zayin Pasuk Aleph. And when we get to the end of this chapter, it won't take too long, you'll find that this is probably, and you'll see why, probably one of the greatest brief eras in the history of the Jewish people. It's coming up in this chapter, and you'll see why. Vayavo anshe Kiryas Yearim, the people of Kiryas Yearim came. Vayalu es Aron Hashem, they raised up the Aron Hashem, and I think not just literally, but figuratively, they elevated the respect for the Aron of Hashem. They knew how to treat it in such a way we don't see any plague happening now. And they brought it to the house of a person by the name Avinadav, who lived in Giva. Elazar beno Kichu lishmor es Aron Hashem. And Elazar, his son, they sanctified him, we'll see what that means, to guard the Aron of Hashem. So the Malbim explains, what happened to the Malbim here? Malbim explains, first of all, they all went out. The people of Kiryas Yearim, meaning they all went out to give honor to the ark, and was brought to the house Avinadav in Giva. And the Radak explains, it seems there were many people by the name of Avinadav, and therefore they explained that he was the Avinadav who lived in Giva, and also that Yonadav had it appeared that perhaps he had two homes in two different places, and therefore they explain it was in the place where his home was in Giva. And then what did they do? Kidsho, the Malbim explains, as Hisminu, they prepared him. And all aspects of holiness need preparation, and that's why when you're saying that you're becoming sanctified, you're making yourself holy, meaning you're preparing yourself for the holiness, and therefore you're separating yourself from all other activities for a specific act. So in other words, what the Malbim is saying is the ark was brought to this place, and then his son Elazar, he designated himself strictly to deal with the ark and nothing else. In other words, if you're dealing with such a holy thing, you don't involve yourself with other activities. You've got to be focused on this activity. And we'll see that no plague happened. Everything was fine. The ark felt that it was being treated in the right way, and therefore things moved along very peacefully. Pasuk Beis. Vayhi yom sheves Aron v'Kiryas Yearim, and it was from the day that the ark was sitting in Kiryas Yearim. Vayirbu hayomim, the days became longer. As the time passed by. Vayiyu esrim shana, it was 20 years. Vayinohu kol beis Yisrael acharei Hashem, and all the house of Israel flowed after Hashem. In other words, they were listening to Hashem. So Malbim explains the nature of this time frame. So this time frame of, now this I'm not exactly sure exactly the time frame exactly, but this time frame began from when the ark sat in Kiryas Yearim, and it sat there on a steady basis, and until the point of 20 years passed by. Now some commentators say, what's the 20 years? It's 11 years in the lifetime of Shmuel, 2 more in the lifetime of Shul after Shmuel's death, and 7 years while David HaMelech was still in Hebron. In other words, this is how they split up the 20 years from this point in time. In other words, it was staying for a certain while, and then it was staying for up to 20 years, and that's how the 20 years are divided up. And it's saying that even though different leaders switched, it was 3 different leaders, Shmuel, Shul, and David, still the Navi is saying that from that period of time with different leaders, still the Jewish people all were faithfully following Hashem, because they saw the great holiness of the ark, and that it gave the Jews a certain degree of pride to know that everything was back in the way it was. And others that's one shot. Others are saying that no, it was 20 years until the next big event happened, which is coming up shortly. So there's a debate exactly which 20 years we're talking about over here. But fine, but at least 20 years passed by, if not more. Okay, moving on to Pasuk Gimel. Vayomer Shmuel el kol beis Yisrael. Shmuel now speaks to all the Jewish people of Israel, Lamor, saying, now here comes the mass tshuva movement. Im b'chol levavachem atem shavim el Hashem. If you return to Hashem with all your hearts, hasiru es Elohei hanechor mitochachem va'ashtaros. Remove the foreign gods that are amongst you, and amongst them is one of them called the Ashtaros, which we will explain shortly. V'achinu levavchem el Hashem, and prepare your hearts to Hashem. V'ivduhu levado, and serve Him alone. V'yatzel eschem miyad plishtim, and He will save you from the hands of the plishtim. You have to remember, the Jews lost a horrific loss to the plishtim years ago. It seems that the plishtim were probably controlling the Jewish people at this time. And after the years began to pass, Shmuel Hanavi is feeling that the Jewish people are ready to do some serious tshuva. So as the Malbim explains, that if you can arouse yourselves, Shmuel aroused the Jews to return to do tshuva. And he says you can do tshuva with all your hearts. So the Malbim explains that one of the conditions of complete tshuva is cleansing oneself. Meaning to say that a person returns, has regret, leaves his past deeds, and he only does good, he doesn't do bad in the future. And you need to have, in other words, it's cleaning out the past, fixing up the future, and both aspects have to be done not only in thought, but also in action. And therefore, if you look at all the details, that's what he's bringing out over here. Number 1, remove the foreign idols that are amongst you. So what he means is, but he says, mitochachem. He says, remove the foreign idols, mitochachem, from amongst you. So Malbim learns meanings from the inside of your heart. In other words, mentally remove that. What do you mean mentally? In other words, removing idols from your mind means I don't really believe that any other power other than Hashem can help me. And that's the mental tshuva that's got to happen. And on the other hand, then actually have to do it. And then he says after it, Hesiru Hashtaros. In other words, why do you have to say? The Malbim is coming up with this pshat by looking at the text. It says, remove the foreign gods from amongst you and the Ashtaros. Isn't the Ashtaros part of the foreign gods? So just say, remove the Ashtaros. If he's saying remove the foreign gods from amongst, and also it should say remove the foreign gods and the Ashtaros from amongst you. The clause is very not normal, right? Either say remove the foreign gods and the Ashtaros from amongst you, right? Or say from amongst you the foreign, but you don't say remove the foreign gods from amongst you and the Ashtaros. So therefore he's saying remove the foreign gods from amongst you. That means the whole mental understanding that you got to remove foreign gods from your life, in your mind, that you don't believe in that in other forces. And then the primary idol of the Plishtim that it seems that the Jews were following was the one called Ashtaros, which we'll explain again exactly what that means. Now that's for the past. Now in the future, in terms of the hidden, the mental tshuva, it says, "V'hachinu levavchem el Hashem," prepare your hearts for Hashem, and not to mix in any thoughts in the future. and then actively the ivduhu levado, and serve him alone without any partnership, without any foreign idols. And if you do that, then Hashem will save you from the Plishtim who are ruling over you. And the point really is that as long as the Jews, we'll see in a minute as well, as long as the Jews are in a lower religious state, the ark remains not in its proper place, and then they realize how bad things are, and then the prophet's able to bring them to do tshuva. And if you can do all that tshuva, then things are going to get a lot better, as we will see. So how did the Jews respond to this? Pasuk Daled, Vayisiru Bnei Yisrael es haba'olim es hashtaros. They removed the various idols, the Baal and the Ashtaros. V'yavdu es Hashem levado, and they served Hashem alone. So therefore, they did the tshuva in the past. They did it actively. They removed those various idols. So it was in the future that they served Hashem alone. But it's interesting. Shmuel, according to the Malbim, Shmuel is asking for really 4 elements. There should be tshuva from the past activities, mentally and physically, and tshuva towards the future, mentally and physically. But all the pasuk talks about is the physical actions. What about the mental actions? Because the Navi can't write that, because only Hashem knows what really was in their hearts. Shmuel could say, remove idolatrous notions from your hearts. Serve Hashem with all your heart. That, the Navi can't say that, because that is only up to Hashem to say. And you can't really say, and you could say maybe even then they didn't totally remove everything from their hearts. But it's clearly missing, that aspect is missing. Now that Shmuel sees that the Jewish people have done a real amazing tshuva. So Pasuk Hey, Vayomer Shmuel, so Shmuel says, Kivtzu es kol Yisrael ha-mitzpasa. Gather all the Jews to a place called Mitzvah. And when I was in Eretz Yisrael with Moshe, Ira took us to a spot that he said that the people say that is exactly where Mitzvah is. And Mitzvah, if you notice, Mitzvah is an elevated plateau. And from Mitzvah, you can look in all 4 directions in Eretz Yisrael. It's like in the heartland of Eretz Yisrael. In the middle, it's on a plateau. You look north, you can see mamish miles and miles. You can look south, miles, west, east. It's a very great vantage point and a very centrally located spot. So he gathers them all in Mitzvah. He tells them to do that. Ve'espalel ba'adchem el Hashem, and I'll pray for you to Hashem. So after Shmuel says this great preparation happened, that the Jews really were doing tshuva, and we know that Mitzvah was a place where the Jews generally gathered together for holy activities and to serve Hashem and to speak to Hashem. So there he would daven for them after they've already done tshuva. Pasuk Vav, Vayikovtzu ha-mitzvasa, they all gathered to Mitzvah, which number 1 showed the unity that the Jews had in serving Hashem as one. Vayishavu mayim, and they drew water. Now what does it mean to draw water? What were they drawing water for? So we'll see in a minute, but the Malbim says the simple pshat is, and that's what the next couple words as well say, Vayishpachu lifnei Hashem, and they poured it before Hashem. So he says these are the waters of tears and crying. Or it could, or that they spilled their hearts out like water. In other words, they drew water, they spilled it out, they were crying before Hashem. That's number 2 that they did. Number 3, Vayatsumu bayamahu, they fasted on this day, which means to every individual in the fasting would be focusing on any other averes they may have done as individuals or as a group, and to have a final separation. And finally, what happened? Vayom Rusham, and they said, Chotanu Hashem, we sinned to Hashem, and this is the vidu, this is the regret on the averes between man and Hashem. And finally, Vayishpot Shmuel es bnei Yisrael b'mitzvah, and Shmuel judged the people in mitzvah, meaning he dealt with all the averes between man and man, because that tshuva alone doesn't help. And Shmuel sorted out things and got people back together with each other. And these were the 5 things that the Jews did, and it's the first time in a very, very long time that the Jewish people did a tshuva, a proper tshuva that they should have been doing all along. So when this last part So I just have a few copies of the Pri Tzaddik, just to look through a couple important aspects that the Pri Tzaddik brings out over here. And the idea being, and it really is, what he's talking about is not relating specifically to this story, but it does the concept of Vayishavu Mayim, they drew water and they poured it before Hashem. This idea of the drawing the water and pouring before the Hashem. So the Pri Tzaddik, we just finished the Yontav a few weeks ago, speaks about the idea of the mitzvah called Nisuch HaMayim, the water libation offering that was brought on the second day of Sukkot. And he brings down from the Zohar, again the pasuk we've been learning Shabbos morning, the pasuk of Mayim Rabim Lo Yuchlu Lechabes Asa'avo. Great waters cannot extinguish the love, and if a person offers you a lot of money for that love, you will denigrate such a person. So if you look on the right-hand column where I have it underlined, the first set of underlines, we'll jump around, we're not going to do the whole piece, but try to get the main idea, what he's talking about here. And what's the symbolism of the water over here, specifically over here, even though the Malvin says it's tears, but and it's not going to be in contradiction, but what else was going on, and perhaps when was all this going on? We'll see, it all should make a lot of sense. So he says, Kimayim meramzim al hashpa. Water is symbolic of hashpa, of a flow, meaning of a divine flow of goodness that Hashem brings to the world. Just like water, Mayim Rabim, it's rushing water. So, but water in general means a divine flow. Umayim Rabim, and a lot of water, Hainu Koch HaKlipa V'Sam, which means the power of klipa, of negativity, of the outer shell, the negative aspects. And Hugam Kein Lahashpia, it's also able to influence. And as we learned in the Balatani, the Mayim Rabim is a reference to the flood waters of Noach. It's the reference to the Asik Parnasa, the preoccupation with Parnas, which all is a negative realm, which is also a flow, but a negative kind of a flow. And as it says by Haman, he gives a good example. He says, remember the story of Haman, Vaseres Alofim Kikar Kesef Eshkol Al Ginse HaMelech. He says, Haman said to Achashverosh when he wanted to kill the Jews, he said, I'll give you 10,000 kikar of silver, and I'll count it out, and we'll go to the warehouses of the king. That's what Haman offered Achashverosh. Now, remember the rule in the Megillah Esther is, whenever it just says Hamelech without the word Achashverosh, it's not only talking about Achashverosh, it's also talking about the king of all kings. Umelech Stam, whenever it just says the word Melech without appending it with Achashverosh, Mem Hey, Melech Malchei HaMlachim, the king of all kings. So what is going on? What is Haman effectively interacting with Hashem with? Hainu Sha'amar Haman. Haman said, Sheshu Koach Lefazeres Kolhom Beisel Tzedakah, that he has the power to spread around and spend a full household of money, Shnikraim, which is called Chonein Dalim, which is called having mercy on the poor. Meaning to say, Haman claims that he can give tzedakah just as the Jews do. That's how the way the Pri Tzaddik, Rabbi Tzaddik HaKohen is learning. Meaning to say, Haman says, I'm going to give 10,000 to the king. Meaning to say, we'll work on a charitable project for the realm. That's what my donation will go to. So we'll see in a minute what that's about, why he would be doing that. We'll see in a minute what that's all about. But that would create a great prosecution against the Jewish people. Because in that time, the Jewish people were not very united with each other, and they probably weren't very big into giving tzedakah. And Haman is showing, look what I can do. I'm giving so much tzedakah that makes the Jews look really bad. So that's part of his plan to bring destruction to the Jews. So this is the Mayim Rabim, the great rushing water that is in a very negative way. We'll see what all this is meaning in a minute. And this all referencing the pasuk of Mayim Rabim Lo Yuchel Lichbos Esavo. The great waters cannot extinguish the love. So what does he mean? So there's rushing waters of the evil of Haman. And Haman is showing a great hashpa'ah, a great influence. He's providing lots of tzedakah. Now that negative influence maybe would be able to cause the destruction of the Jewish people and destroy that love that Hashem has for the Jewish people. But it says, but the pasuk says, even with that, this cannot extinguish the love of the Jewish people, which is expressed through the water offering that they give. What does that mean? It means the whole power of generosity that comes to the Jews. Again, this idea of hashpah means is the giving. The giving. It literally means a flow, but the power of giving. The Jewish people have a power of giving which expresses their love to Hashem. Haman wanted to destroy the Jews. He wanted to show that the Jewish people's love to Hashem isn't such a great love. And I can prove it to you, because my love is I'm able to show much more philanthropic activities than the Jewish people. So he was hoping his Mayim Rabim would be able to extinguish this love that Hashem has for the Jews and the Jews have for Hashem. But the love that the Jews have for Hashem is expressed through their Nisuch Mayim, through the pouring of the water on Sukkos. V'hainu, meaning to say, Ki kol koach hanedivos hashpor shalhem, the great power of the Jewish giving, eina bepnimis halev, meaning, of Haman, of Haman, eina bepnimis halev, is not from the depths of his heart. Rak la'orer kitrig al Yisrael. It's only to arouse prosecution against the Jews. In other words, what he is saying is, when non-Jewish people give to tzedakah, it is no way on any way close to the level of how a Jew gives to tzedakah. It isn't possible. When a non-Jew gives to tzedakah, there's always a reason why they give. There's always a reason why they give. They give either because they're going to get a lot of honor. They give maybe because they feel guilty. They have so much. Why shouldn't they share with others? At the end of the day, when a non-Jew does anything good, it has to serve some kind of ulterior motive. The idea of doing things like l'shem shamayim, it just doesn't enter their realm. Doesn't enter their realm. There's always an agenda behind the giving. And to the worst extreme, by Haman, his agenda was one purpose. This is how I'm going to annihilate the Jewish people. And that's why the Navi says, Chesed le'umim chatos. The kindness of the nations of the world is considered a sin. That's considered a sin. In other words, they're always doing it because of some... Now, chet has many meanings. It can mean just deficiency, missing the target, whatever. It's not coming from the same place as it comes from a Jew. And that's what we're learning in this week's parsha with Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu, I didn't finish. Avram Avinu, when he was kind, he wasn't kind because it did something for him. There was nothing in it for him when he did kindness. The non-Jewish world, the best they can do in kindness, remember, we talked about this many times, and we talked about it on the Shabbos over the summer. We talked about the idea that we try to emulate the behavior of Hashem. And Hashem, one of the midas of Hashem is chesed. But the chesed, we see the difference in the chesed of Avram and the chesed of Lot in this week's parsha. And that is clear the difference between the tzaddik and the goy, the Jew and the goy, the difference of chesed. It's in this week's parsha. When Avram gives, there's nothing in it for himself at all. He gives because that's an attribute of Hashem. Hashem gives expecting nothing in return. Absolutely nothing in return. Hashem doesn't give because it feels good to give. He doesn't give because it'll be better for society. If society's better off, then it's better for me. He doesn't give because I just feel wonderful when I give it. That's not why you give. You give because as God, the definition of God is you give. Finished. That's the godly way of giving. And you give in a way that the recipient doesn't feel bad at all. At all. Because we said the contradiction. Giving always can cause a backlash where the recipient feels that he owes things to you and then feels bad and he's been minimized by your giving. And therefore Hashem gives in a way that even the recipients don't even realize that they're giving. And we can't go through that whole parsha again. But God gives because He's God. Finished. There's never a reason. That's what an all-powerful God, He's only about giving for no ulterior motives. He gives even though the recipients aren't thankful for what they get. It's not a concept of I'm giving and I'm expecting at least a thanks in return. Hashem gets very little thanks in this world for all that He does. He gives because as God is, God gives. Finished. He gives life. That's what He is. He's the giver. He's the ultimate giver. So a Jew has the kind of soul that makes him capable of giving in the same way. Not every Jew does, but Jews can. The biggest proof is you look at what Avram did in this week's parsha. That after he's circumcised and he has every reason in the world to say I need a break from giving, he's waiting outside of the tent and he says I can't live if I can't give. Not because I need it. That's my essence. My essence as a person in the image of God is just like God always gives. I have to always give. That's what's inside of me. Why? What do you get for it? I don't get anything for it. But that's what I have to do. I'm a giving machine. And I don't check everybody's ID and all these things. And even if they're Arabs and they're not believers in Hashem, I just give for them for no other purpose. Lot, on the other hand, he gave, and if you look through all the text carefully, he gave because this is what would make him feel prominent. Lot gives because he sees the angels came and says, ooh, these are important people. Oh, for my prestige to have important people stay in my house. Well, Avram looks at 3 idol-worshipping Arabs and says, doesn't matter who they are, I have to give to people, even of the lowest stature. And Lot, wants to, condescend upon the guests and make them feel how much they are needy of him, to the point the guests don't even want to stay by him. He has almost forced them to stay by him. Can't go through the whole story. But that's clearly the difference, as we said as team, being in the Selam Elokim and the Demus Elokim. Selam means you just imitate, but it's not the same thing at all. And Demus means you model that behavior, totally. You model godly behavior. And you see this, you see this in people who give. You can see it in the different people who give to tzedakah. Those, when they give, and it's going to be a whole geschäft. The people who give, it's with all these conditions. If you want my money, you got to do this, you got to do that, and it has to be such a big plaque, and it has to be this, and it has to be that. And if I think you slighted me in the least, then I'm cutting the donation 50% this year to teach you a lesson. There are people like that. And there's other people, they quietly write the check. You don't even know, they don't tell anybody, and say use it for what you think is necessary. And that's all. It comes with no strings attached. Because they realize you just give, finished. That's the way a Jew gives. And you have to force them, say, no, it's important. You force them to say they have to put a plaque up so other people know that there are people who give in this world. There's 2 different kinds of givers. So what Rabbi Tzadok is saying is that when a Jew gives, when the non-Jew gives, it's not coming from the depths of his heart. They have to get something out of it. And that means, chatos means there's something deficient in their giving. It can range from a deficiency of, it's something's missing in the wholesomeness of it, to the point where really it's even something negative. And here, Haman is giving money for the only purpose of prosecuting against the Jewish people. Right? While a Jew's giving is not from that at all. And look at the difference. Then you can ask your question, shall we? Masha'en King Yisrael, on the other hand, the Jewish people, all they pour is 3 log of water, which is not a lot. It's not a lot of water. 1 bucket of water. What's the big deal for 1 bucket of water? But that's al remes, but that's hinting that shegam ha'ashpah v'nedivus ma'at, even a little bit of philanthropy that comes from a Jew, hashpah, a giving, machriya es hamon mayim rabim shalhem, it can overcome and outweigh the tremendous amount of water, meaning tzedakah, that the non-Jews of the world give. Shenikrei mayim hazadonim, which is really the waters of iniquity. Masha'en kein bechinas hamayim shel Yisrael. On the other hand, the aspect of the waters of the Jew, hema besimcha bepnimius nekudas alev. It comes from a joy from the innermost point of their heart. Kishenemer, as it says, Usha'afte mayim b'sason, as the pasuk says, they draw forth water with great joy. In other words, the whole idea of the Nisuch HaMayim, the whole idea of the pouring of the water represents the great love that the Jewish people have for Hashem. And this love connects to the highest levels of our soul, which connects us to Hashem. And everything depends on the heart and their happiness of giving the tzedakah. And the Gemara says it very clearly. He says, if a Jew gives money to tzedakah, he says, Hashem, I'm giving money on the condition that my son should get better. Which, would appear to me not be the highest level. But what happens if, let's say, the child doesn't get better? So Gemara says, but when they give, they don't regret the giving. They don't regret the giving. Maybe the sickness was the stimulus for the tzedakah at this time. But at the end of the day, the Jew really always wants to give. The Jew really always wants to give. But there's a Yetzer Hara that doesn't want him to give, so you've got to get past that Yetzer Hara. But the Jew at the end of the day never regrets the tzedakah that he gives. So if a non-Jew gives on condition, the condition doesn't come true, then he regrets even giving it. And even wants it back. That's what Gemara says. So we'll connect this solution. Let's just a little bit further. Just a little bit further. Now jump all the way to the bottom. We see the lines again. About 7 lines from the bottom. He says, V'nisach hamayim v'mizbeach, and the nisach of the mayim, the pouring of the water in the mizbeach. Hayored l'shishin ha'mechoylem ad ha'tahom. The water would go all the way down a sheesh. A sheesh was like a tube. It went all the way down the side of the mizbeach, and it went all the way down to the depths, deep, deep down. There was a hole all the way down to the bottom of the earth. And the shishim heim may shin yud base, may sheshim may braces, is from the 6 days of creation. In other words, where the world was created from. In other words, this, and he extracts that from the word bereshis. Bereshis is a contraction of the words baroshis. Hashem created the shishim, these tubes, these holes that went to the bottom core of the earth, from where the earth emanated from. From where the earth emanated from. That's how far the water would go down. V'al yedei nisach gimelugin, through the pouring of these 3 lug of water, mayim, hamarames al kibutz hamor pnimi, that's representing the collection of the inner light. Shel ha'ava b'nekudas alev shaladim, the 3 log of water, which water represents love, which represents the giving that one gives after love. And although it's not a lot, but it's a giving that comes from the depths of every Jewish heart. And the water goes all the way down to the depths of the core of the earth. Nischaber ad tahom, it connects to the depths. Shema mayonas ha'chachma, which means the depths of wisdom. And go to the next column, just a couple more lines, the next underlines. And he's saying that niftachu mayonas ha'chacham shaloras ha'pnimis, the depths of wisdom of the innermost light is opened up. The koach haTorah, to the power of Torah b'chlal, close of Hashrol, through all the power of the Jewish people, as is hinted to in Shafta Mayim b'sasom mayna Yeshua. You'll draw forth water and joy from the springs of salvation. So this whole act of the Nisuch HaMayim was a physical representation of the tremendous love that the Jewish people had for Hashem. This is the whole symbolism. That's what water represents. Water represents this, and that's why it's not a contradiction. Say, for the crying that comes from a person. Why do you cry for something or somebody? Ultimately, it's because you love that person. Right? You go to a funeral, people are crying. Why are they crying? Because they're sad. Why are they sad? That's what I say. If you go to a funeral of somebody you don't like, you're usually not crying. You go to business associate. You had to go. It's politically correct to go to the funeral. You're not crying. So who's crying? People love the person. Who cries the most? The mishpacha. The children cry. They love. Who cries the real most? The almana, the widow. Because crying just represents love. It's all it is. You cry because of any other reason? You hate somebody, you're crying? You're happy when something bad's happened to the bad person. Crying means love. So what's coming out of that? Water. Where's it coming from? It's coming from inside the person. This is the drawing forth of the water. The water is coming. That's the water. That's the tears. When you see tears, that means there's a tremendous amount of love. The more tears, the more love that existed there. So that's what the Jews are able to produce, and that's what it means that the Jewish people they drew forth the water, they poured forth the water before Hashem. So that can happen when you're doing real tshuva. You should really be crying, saying, Hashem, I love you so much. How could I have hurt you so much? How could I have hurt the relationship? So on Sukkot, the second day of Sukkot, after Rosh Hashanah, after Yom Kippur, after the Jews have shown they cried so much, now we just say, but we love you so much, and we don't have to take a lot of water. It's not the quantity of the gift, it's the quality of the gift. So that represents the Jewish giving, which is on Sukkot, which is Man Simchaseinu, which shows the epitome of the joy that we have for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, there's love and there's love. That's the end of Reb Tzadok. Now, there's love and there's love. The Plishtim, they also had a great love. And they had a great love for money. That was their love. And their idol, now we're going back to their idol, was called Ashtaros. Now, if you look carefully, the word Ashtaros, what is the idol of Ashtaros? So, on the simple level, it was a goddess of fertility. That's what it was, a goddess of fertility. But that is a code word for taiva, for lust. And what is the most important aspect of making lust happen? Money. Without money, you can't fulfill the lusts that you have. And if you look at Ashtaros, this name of the idol, it says, for example, the Gemara says why there's places called, for example, Ashtaros Soncha, the Ashtaros of your sheep. So the root word of Ashtaros is Osher, wealth. And the Gemara explains, Ashtaros means Shema Ashiros Espalem, makes their owners wealthy. Whereas if you've got a cash herd of cattle, what's the significance? You can become very wealthy with cattle. So Ashtaros is from the word Osher, which means wealth. So the Plishtim really idolized wealth. And that's what they loved. They had a tremendous love for wealth and all the lusts that come after that. And that's why when Hashem punished the Plishtim for taking the ark, He punished them with the mice that we talked about, if you remember, long ago, Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse, the mouse is what? The rodent, he wants everything. He chews into everything, even into your hat. Right? He's selfish. He wants it all for himself. And that's the icon of America, Mickey Mouse. That's what the mouse mystically represents, a very selfish Baal Taiva. So Mickey Mouse, everyone runs to see Mickey Mouse. That's what it is. So that's Hashem punishes them with mice. Right? But that was and the Jews fell into that trap. And Shmuel was telling the Jewish people all along, you also got caught up into this love for Taiva. But deep, deep, deep down, your real love is for Hashem, which is symbolized by the Nisuch HaMayim, the pouring of the water on Sukkot. And that is the pouring of the water that the Jewish people are doing now. That Hashem is saying to them, the Jewish people are telling to Hashem, that we really are pouring our water, our hearts out to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's the ultimate. And that's why we would assume to say that this story happened on Sukkot as well. That this story happened on Sukkot as well, because that's the real Zman Simchaseinu. And this is the deeper love which comes out on Sukkot, which is interesting. If you notice, there's two Megillas we read, one on Pesach, or we read a lot of Megillas, one on Pesach and one on Sukkot. On Pesach it's Shir HaShirim, on Sukkot it's Koheles. So what's the difference? Shir HaShirim is full of love, but that's full of youthful love. And really, Shlomo Melech wrote it in his younger days. So it's the youthful love, that's the love you have on Pesach. We just got married to Hashem. Right, He just took us out of Egypt, everything's amazing. But now Sukkah, but Koheles was written in Shlomo's older days. And it's a mature love, reflecting the pure love that one has for Hashem. And that's why we read it on Sukkot. And we talk about how everything is hevel, all the monetary things are worthless. Why are we talking about all that? Well, the whole message of Koheles is what? All of life is hevel.
It's depressing.
It's depressing because it's saying when you look at life from a materialistic point of view, it's very depressing.
Maybe next year, Rabbi, like you did for
we'll learn some Koheles. Okay, maybe.
I read it and I said, "Whoa."
No, but what is he saying?
I don't understand.
So what is after the? Well, why we read it on? But it's read on Zman Simchaseinu. We're reading in the time of our joy. The answer is, you will only have joy if you realize that all this materialism, if you're running after materialism as a goal for itself, it'll only bring you sadness. If you realize that materialism alone, is only sadness.
Isn't that where it says better not to have been being born?
If you live a life of materialism, it's better not being born, because your life is all hell. I was just meeting with somebody last night, not members of the Shul. They're connected to the Shul peripherally. And a person's crying their heart out to me. Mama's crying. And what did it all revolve around? And they're doing well. But one spouse is a professional, the other's a businessman. They're doing well. It's a recession, maybe not as well, but they're doing okay. A roof over their head, clearly living a nice lifestyle. Good. And crying bitterly because there's someone in the mishpacha, this whole fight. It's all over money. It was all over money. I said, let it go. I said, forget about it. It's $300,000. Let it go. You know how much of your life has gone down the drain because of this, and your parents' life went down the drain. You don't need the $300,000. You can live without the $300,000. Okay, they were losing it under terms that weren't proper, and maybe they were losing something that really maybe rightfully belonged to them. But it was so complicated, and it was taking the life out of them. Mom is taking the life out of them. Their marriage was getting messed up over it, and there was the whole topic of conversation their whole lives for the last 3 years. And I said, you got wonderful kids, you got a wonderful husband. You're not seeing any of it. All you're seeing is you're losing all the money. They're spending money on lawyers to save this $300,000. I said, let it go. It's not worth your health. It's not worth, and the person's parents are getting sick over this. I said, just get it out of your life. It's just money, and it just eats them up alive. And that's better not to be born. That's the message of Koheles, and that's what the Nisach HaMayim. The Nisach HaMayim is returning back to Hashem. It's coming back to Hashem. So we can suggest over here that Shmuel is doing the Nisach HaMayim, as it were, showing that our love is deeply pouring out to Hashem. And if you have that, this will set the stage for tomorrow, for the most amazing miracle that's going to happen. But it doesn't happen until the Jews. Now you can see, Shelley, how after the book of Shoftim, how the Jews have made a big, big change. This is a different Jewish people. And when you look at the Nisach HaMayim as a ceremony, it's called a ceremony. It's very interesting. Rav Soloveitchik of blessed memory. Just another minute, we'll finish this. He said like this: other religions of the world, they have ceremonies. Judaism does not have ceremonies. What does he mean? He says other religions have rituals, but no halacha. In Judaism, every observance is a mitzvah, which is bound by halachic points which have a specific goal. Is when Jews get together and we do any quote-unquote ritual, ceremony, it's not just a ceremony. The non-Jewish world is a ceremony, and there's nothing behind the ceremony. There's no depth to the ceremony. When the Jew has a quote-unquote ceremony, it's based on halacha, that has a goal that has to be achieved. You have to do the ceremony in a particular way, and if you deviate a little bit from that, you haven't accomplished the goal of the ceremony, because the ceremony really is just to bring out a specific goal within the person. So you say, wow, you tell a non-Jew, what we do on Sukkot, we pour water down the altar. Says, oh, that's an interesting ceremony. But it's not meant for that. That act of pouring isn't just a symbol. It's meant to accomplish something. You have to pour your heart out before Hashem. Right? There's an inherent significance to that pouring. It's interesting, Rav Hirsch, when he was writing his commentary on the Chumash and different things he wrote a lot about the mitzvahs as lots of symbolisms, because he's talking to a lot of secular Jews who are going to be like Germans. So he's trying to show them the symbolisms. And Rav Kook wrote very strongly against Rav Hirsch in this area. And he says you got to be very careful to say that all these mitzvahs are symbolisms, because that's a step away from idolatry. You have to be careful. Of course, Rav Hirsch wasn't an idol worshiper, but he was treading on very thin water, thin ice. Because, if everything's just a symbol, then the next step, wrongly used, can be idolatry. And mitzvahs are not symbols. They're meant to be the actual means by which Kedusha comes down into a Jew. We're going to put on tefillin now. We could say it's a nice symbolic act of your relationship to God. It's more than a symbolic act. It's the essence of you giving over your life to HaKadosh Baruch Hu now. You say, my hand is just for Hashem, my mind is just for Hashem, up to the Rabbi Moser Nefesh for Hashem. And then that's meant to make you feel closer to Hashem. And when the Jews poured their water out before Hashem, they literally connected to Hashem in the deepest ways.
Like a wedding is a good example.
A wedding is a good example. That's right. A Jewish wedding. That's right. A ceremony. A non-Jew, it's a ceremony. And the ceremony itself, unless you're going to sign a document, has no legal standing at all. If you don't sign that piece of paper, has no legal standing at all. A Jewish wedding, the ksuba really has nothing to do with the chuppah. So the fact that the symbolic act of giving the ring, it's not symbolic. It changes their halachic status forever. And if the husband and wife don't feel that their lives are changed, they've missed the whole point of the wedding. Very good example.